The Weight of a Feather In. A quiet coastal town nestled between the cliffs and the sea lived an elderly fisherman named Elias. For decades, he had sailed the waters, providing the freshest catch to his neighbors. Elias had become a beloved figure, always kind, always smiling. But what no one knew was the secret burden he carried. Elias lived alone in a humble cottage near the shore. In the attic of his home was a chest, locked and untouched for decades. It was said that Elias never let anyone enter his attic, and when asked about it, he would simply smile and change the subject.
One day, a young journalist named Clara arrived in the village. She was working on a series of stories about life in small coastal towns. Upon meeting Elias, she was captivated by his warmth and wisdom, and she decided to spend time with him, hoping to uncover the essence of his charm. As weeks passed, Clara noticed something peculiar about Elias. He had moments of deep silence, his gaze drifting out to sea as though he was searching for something lost. Intrigued, she finally asked, "Elias, you always seem so at peace, but sometimes your eyes tell a different story. What weighs on your heart?" Elias hesitated, then sighed. "Ah, child, everyone carries a burden. Mine is locked away, but it never truly leaves."
Clara's curiosity grew, and one evening, after much persuasion, Elias took her to the attic. Dust floated in the golden light of the setting sun as he unlocked the chest. Inside, there was no treasure, no heirlooms, only a single white feather and a small journal. Elias picked up the feather with trembling hands. "This feather belonged to a seagull," he began, "but it represents something far heavier." He opened the journal and began to read aloud. The story he told was one he had never shared before.
Years ago, Elias had been a young and ambitious fisherman. One stormy night, he went out to sea despite warnings. The catch was abundant, but the storm grew fierce, and his boat began to capsize. In his panic, Elias cried out for help, and another fisherman, his childhood friend Matteo, came to his rescue. But as Matteo tried to pull him aboard, the boat tipped further, and Matteo fell into the raging sea. Elias, consumed by fear and the need to save himself, hesitated. By the time he acted, Matteo was gone, swallowed by the waves. All that was left was a single white feather from a seagull that had circled overhead. Elias survived, but the guilt of his hesitation haunted him. He could not forgive himself for valuing his own life over his friends. The feather became a symbol of his failure, a constant reminder of the cost of his fear.
Clara listened in silence, tears streaming down her face. "Elias, you've carried this alone for so long, but guilt and grief are not meant to be solitary burdens. Have you ever spoken to Matteo's family?" He shook his head. "I was too ashamed." Clara convinced Elias to visit Matteo's sister Maria, who still lived in the village. Together they went to her home. Maria was now an elderly woman, her face weathered but kind. When Elias confessed his story, he expected anger, perhaps even hatred. But Maria simply took his hands and said, "Elias, Matteo loved you like a brother. He would not want you to live your life shackled by this guilt. You made a mistake, but you lived, and you've used your life to bring kindness to others. Let that be his legacy." Elias wept, and for the first time in decades, he felt a weight lift from his soul. The feather, once so heavy with meaning, now felt light. He returned to the chest and placed the feather inside, but this time it was not out of shame. It was a tribute, a reminder not of his failure, but of the lessons learned through his pain.
Moral of the story: we all carry burdens, some visible and some hidden deep within. But guilt and regret, when shared and faced with courage, can transform into wisdom and strength. Redemption is not about erasing the past, but about choosing to live meaningfully in the present. Forgiveness, both of oneself and from others, is the key to setting the soul free.